Glad you could make it. Good to see you.
Sorry.
You just needed to confirm that you're participating remotely.
Russ Hallisey participating remotely.
As if that wasn't obvious. Okay, thank you. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at the minutes from last week?
Yes.
Yes.
Any comments or?
I didn't have any comments. I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
The only thing the only comment I might have, and we'll probably be talking about that tonight, but my notes said that we had actually said that we wanted 4 appointees from each of the 3 groups. Did we decide on that, or is that just still open for discussion?
We didn't vote on it.
Okay.
But we did talk about it and seemed to be settling on 4, but we didn't take any votes, so it's not official.
Okay. And then the other comment I had was when it talked about the Board of Selectmen's appointing of the planning board member, I think we agreed that the planning board would be the ones who would choose who that was going to be. I would suggest that we add that in, and the result is that the selectmen are the appointing people, but they're going to appoint who the planning board says.
I can make that change and send it in if that's appropriate.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
I think just to confirm, this is just for the meetings to reflect the discussion last week. None of this is things that have been approved or they're finalized.
That's right. That's right.
and I think we said that same thing for the warrant committee member, that the moderator would appoint, that they'd ask and the warrant committee would choose who wanted to.
Right.
Okay, so I'll use the word chosen by.
I think extending that rationale, same is true for the school committee as well. The school committee as a unit would choose its people.
Okay,
That one, there's not an interim appointee, so maybe it's kind of moot, but.
Okay. And we're going to dig into all of this a little bit more tonight. So with those, can we move back to the motion to approve the minutes?
Yeah, so I would move to approve the meeting minutes of March 15th as so amended.
Second.
Okay. I'm in favor.
I think we have to do a roll call vote. Even
Oh, yeah, right.
We do. No, we do. So I'm going to go through. So Sarah, do you approve your own motion?
Yes.
Okay. I approve. Tom?
Yes.
Cynthia?
yes,
Carolyn?
Yes.
And Russ?
Yes.
Okay, great. So how do folks want to go at this tonight? I mean, I think we, in my view of the world, we need to start approving some pieces.
Well, hold on, Bob. We do have one attendee. I think, were we planning on taking public comment at the beginning again?
No.
I don't think so. No,
No, that was just last time.
Did
Okay,
not
I just
do.
wanted to make sure you saw we have one member of the public in attendance.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry to that citizen. One of the things we need to talk about before we convene tonight is the idea of having kind of a public hearing, just sort of an open forum on it, which I think folks felt was important to do, but I think we thought for tonight we would not do so. Okay. So what do people think about it? I mean, I would like to step back a little bit and talk about approach. I mean, we could probably spend months debating, the various pieces and how they come together, but I think if our mission is to come up with a bylaw at some point, we got to start checking off points that we all kind of tentatively agree to. And so do others have suggestions for how to go at this?
Well, I'm not sure we actually came up with much of a decision on all of the numbers, all of the members we want to have on the committee. I guess we have to do that next or something.
I think
So,
if we went back to the minutes, which were very nicely organized, and kind of just pick each agency that we've decided is appointing people and to try to just reach consensus. I want to confirm, but I think we're in agreement that we're going to have who we are going to have appoint. What we're open to still is how many and what those people's expertise are. So maybe our, first decision is, do we agree that it's the, Board of Selectmen or the select board, the school committee, and the moderator.
I think that makes good sense.
Just,
I-
start plowing them through.
I like your approach. Do we agree on that, that those are the 3 appointing bodies?
Yes.
I agree with that. I think that makes sense.
We-
Anybody have a different view, or?
I'll let Tom, if he wants to comment. I know that's been a point that he's been thinking about, but once we figure out what we decide, do we want to take like a mini motion on each thing? Or do we want to kind of package a large motion at the end? I'll take notes either way, but.
My suggestion, I actually was thinking about this today. My suggestion would be that we sort of agree tentatively that this is okay. These are the people that are selecting, and then wait till we have a basic structure in place and then vote on that.
That's fine. I'll take notes so I can recap it when we're ready.
I don't have an objection in terms of the moderator appointing. I thought about it, and it's fine. Now, in the continuance of the like, I'll just refer to this as boundaries. I want to throw this into the discussion. I like the idea of a 15-person committee with 2 non-voting members, and this is just a point of discussion, nothing more.
Okay.
Tom, I just want to be clear. So 15 includes 2 people who would be there, but who couldn't vote. So those 3 who are appointing are each appointing,
Well, they wouldn't have an equal number of appointments. It wouldn't be
so one might appoint more than the other. Is
correct.
that-
Yep.
Okay,
Well, we also decided that there would be a number of individuals who would serve, not be appointed. They're just there in loop because of their position, like the town administrator might be one of those. So they wouldn't be an appointed position.
right. And like the superintendent would be there, but is that in your 15, Tom?
Yes, the superintendent and the town administrator would be part of the committee, but non-voting members of the committee.
I was going to say, I don't know if we need to focus on an exact number yet. I think we could keep going down the, who do we want and how many people does each, and kind of see where it leads us.
And I'll tell you, Sarah, why I like numbers, and I hear where you're coming from, because I think a committee that's too big, and I would think anything over 15 is too big. You run into groupthink, and you also run into some dominating personalities, and you run into game theory. And I've never seen a 15-person committee or 13-person committee get jammed up. And now this committee may go on for 9 years. Who knows? So it's as much about the position as it is about the person. So that's it. These are just points of conversation.
I think that's fair. I think some of the committees that we looked at by way of example were much larger than I would have anticipated. And it seemed to me like that might be a difficult way to reach any consensus. 15 doesn't seem to be as high to me, but some of them are 22,
Yeah.
24.
That's crazy. And I think we had talked about sort of three kind of members: the superintendent, the principal of the school building in question, and the town administrator. So that assuming that's where we were heading, then that would leave 12 other members, 4 each, to be appointed by the other 3 appointing bodies. Just not that we're committing to this, but I mean.
I'm sorry,
conceptually.
Bob. Superintendent, town administrator. Who was the third?
The
Principal?
principal of the school building in
Thank you.
question.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, so that if we did 4, 4, and 4, then those 3, right? That I guess us the 15, 3 without votes, 12 with a vote.
Right.
Some of
And
the
with
other
12,
appointed may end up being non-voting, like, for instance, non-residents.
Um,
Well, I think the appointees would all be required to be town residents.
yeah, who would
No,
get?
I don't think so, because you may want somebody who's in the construction industry, and we may not have somebody that we want to serve.
so I'm wondering, in that event, would it be more like a consultant to the committee as opposed to a member of the committee?
I personally viewed that all of the requirements would be met by town residents. For the members.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I assumed each of the groups being appointed were all town residents. It wouldn't, I don't know, did I miss something there, Russ? I don't, like, if I'm the Board of Select people and I'm looking for someone with expertise, I wouldn't go outside the town to appoint, would I? I mean, I don't even know why that person would do it unless you paid them anyhow, but all that aside, but it should be residents yeah.
Yeah, although that then leaves us with 12. If I'm assuming the others would be non-voting, then you have 12. And should we have an odd number?
So a
When it
thought on
comes to
that, I
voting,
thought
yeah.
about that. You know, to my view, it's such a big project. If they can't reach consensus, if you can't get more than 6 out of the 12 to agree to it, maybe it shouldn't be happening. So there's an argument not to have it be an odd number.
Okay.
Well, I think the town wants decisions to be made and not tied, so I don't
How
think
did
the
you get to
town
12
would
from
want a
15,
tie.
Cynthia?
So that there are 4 from each of the appointed. So that's 12.
Plus the 3
the
non-voting. Oh,
3
so your point is
non-voting.
12 voting is not an odd
Well,
number.
voting, right.
Sorry.
But they're not, but they're from very different walks of life, even
That's
though
right.
they're, it's not an odd number. So in that respect, I'm assuming it's going to be a strong conversation, a lot of opinions, a lot of different inputs. And so if you get a majority, I think that would be good.
Well, another way to
What if
handle
we
that is to
did-
say your vote has to be 2/3.
Yeah, or we could look and have 11 voting members or 11 and 3 and have 14 total. You still are under the 15 that Tom expressed a preference for, and you have to get 6, but you don't have a deadlock of 6v6. The question, if you wanted to do that, is who doesn't get 4? The moderator, the select board, or the school committee. Well, I don't know if we're evenly weighted between those people, because I don't think we are. So I don't know. I think personally it would be helpful for me to revisit the number after we decide who, but acknowledging Tom's point about not having too many in the back of my mind as we discuss it.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Tom's point. And, yeah, maybe we can move on to the other pieces. So, all right. So we agree on the 3 appointing bodies, I think, tentatively. I think we agree on the 3, the principal, the superintendent, and potentially the town administrator. But was someone going to get some feedback on the town administrator? And
Before we go to the town administrator on the principal, I just wanted to bear in mind, particularly in our situation here, that it could be 2 principals. What if we had a merger of 2 lower schools? So I don't think it matters, but technically it could be 4 non-voting members. And I think that's fine. I just want to be clear in our drafting that it would be the principals of
Yeah,
the
we could just put
impacted.
principal and S in parentheses of the affected buildings. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So sorry, go back to the town administrator.
no. Good point. Thank you.
Yeah, so I did, so we were going to talk to have Christine post on the website, but then she emailed me and she was trying to figure out how to post her response in a way that wouldn't look like she was just giving a response without being asked a question, if that makes sense, right? So, well, we did actually check with Mark Sorrell so that she and I could have a conversation about it, as opposed to her posting first. And she did say that she had been to most of them in the previous school building committee. And when she couldn't go, a designee went, like the assistant town administrator. She said that, there were a lot of questions about money and buildings and taxes and a lot of things that, the committee did need information for. So the pros were there was somebody there who was able to answer those questions in real time for them. And she was not a voting member, which seemed fine. And that, the cons being, of course, everybody's very busy and there's a lot of committees, but as long as she can send a designee, right, if there's 2 conflicting meetings, then that would work. And she's able to post all that on the website if you would like. I just thought we'd probably need to do like a question ahead so people understand why that's being posted there, that it was solicited by us, right?
I think what precipitated us wanting to ask her at first too was a concern I had expressed that it might put her in an awkward position, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. So I wonder, is there general agreement that it would make sense to have the town administrator and or their designee part?
I
Yes.
think so.
I personally agree.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe we can move on from that. So maybe we know.
So just to make sure I'm reflecting accurately in the notes, what we've decided so far, tentatively, 3 entities appointing voting members, moderator, school committee, board of selectmen, to be decided how many, superintendent, principals of the impacted schools, and town administrator would serve as non-voting members.
Yes.
Yes, I think so.
Right. We'd have to write when, we get to actually writing the bylaw or a designee, right? Just so, even the superintendent, in some systems, if you have an assistant superintendent, you might be sending them some time, right? Because you might have a conflict. So those non-voting people could send somebody else, right?
Yes. Okay. All right, what do we want to move on to next? We want
You want to start, might be an easier one to start with than the select board and the moderator. You want to start with how many we think the school committee should offer up? We already know those people's expertise, so we don't have as much discussion on that.
We had said before there would be 2 school committee members and then 2 other members that they would choose that are not employees.
So just like residents, parents, whatever.
Yeah, some people who have been involved in different things for the schools, who have a sense of public education.
Do people agree with that?
So is that, so if we're saying 4 from the school, doesn't that automatically bring us to 12 total? Because I would think you'd want each of the appointing bodies to have equal weight.
The only, from my notes from the other week and again, we didn't vote on anything, but we had 4 the school committee. And we talked about the moderator. There was 1 warrant, 2 with expertise in building, a senior citizen and a resident out at large. So that actually got us to 5 for the moderator. And the board of selectmen was a planning person and 2 expertise. So that's 3 because we put the town administrator separate from them now. So just, again, that's just where our
So
discussion.
you've sort of unfairly, fairly isn't the right word, but the select board has the least sway.
Yeah, in that model. And so you could up them and take 1 away from the moderator and just make everybody equal with 4.
That would be my view, that I think each of the 3 bodies should have an equal say in
Well, for
appointment.
sake of argument, why does the school committee have to have more than, why does it have to have 4? Are we choosing appointing bodies based on who they know or who they've had experience with? Could the school committee just select 1 to represent?
I don't personally feel that they have to be equally weighted. We can definitely talk about everyone else's opinion, but I would be comfortable with the school committee having 3, and then you get to 11 instead of 12. But
Well, another way to look at it is that the school perspective will be carried by 4 different people. If it's 2 members of the school committee, and then you have the principal and the superintendent, you have 4 people that school is their background.
That's a very good point.
Yeah,
I do like having at least 1 non-school committee member appointed by the school committee to have like a, just a parent's perspective, as opposed to the school committee people have this kind of weird relationship with the school that a parent wouldn't have. So I'd like at least 1 non-school committee member chosen by the school committee.
Yeah, and the principal and superintendent don't vote.
True.
And even if they could vote, I don't see any principal not voting the way the superintendent wants them to vote. We're just, it's the reality of it.
Like your job.
Yeah, you want your job, you're gonna vote, right? So, and the two school committee members are pretty much gonna be voting the same. So I was just thinking that it would be good to have one or two members who are not employees, so they don't have to vote, right? And they're not in the school committees, and they're just people in town who have either kids in the school or had kids in the school or will have kids in the school, and that they're involved in education, and they, some of these decisions are big. They're sometimes in the school building, even in this last one, it wasn't just a building decision. They were actually talking about reorganizing the grades and going from 3 buildings to 2. That's a significant educational decision that I think that we should have some people who aren't just about making the building, but understanding the big educational picture be
Sure.
part of the discussions.
How about a teacher?
Well, unfortunately, it could be a teacher, but it couldn't be an employee. And we have a lot of people in the town who teach in other towns, lots of education.
Yeah, I think you could get educational expertise, to Carolyn's point, and a real understanding of the best interests of the children without them having the complication of being an employee with the awkwardness of voting against their principal or their superintendent.
Right. And even like in terms of, okay, how much technology do teachers really have nowadays? It'd be nice to just have an advocate for what's happening in education that can be independent. So I don't know. I just think that's
Why do we need 2 from the school, 2 members of the school committee sitting on this committee? Why do we need 2?
You could have one that reports back. It's a lot of meetings. So there's
No, the
have
school
been in the
committee,
past
no, the
too.
school, no, the school committee person would be a voting member of
Yes,
this new committee.
they absolutely would. Yes.
Right. So why do you need 2?
I don't know. I generally, on something like this isn't just general permanent building committee. This is school buildings. I feel like the danger of just one is that it's kind of just one person's opinion. I kind of like the idea of having 2, but I'm not sure I'm so wedded to it.
Well, 2 means that, yeah, when they go back and they're talking to the other 3 members, right? You've got 2 people bringing back the message. And because you want to make sure that whatever you're doing here is something that the school committee should be supporting, all 5 of them in the end, right? This is.
The school committee supported the last project.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Tom?
The school committee supported the last project unanimously.
Yes.
I'm not thinking that this is fraught with risk, but perhaps maybe it's a little too heavily weighted with 2 members of the school committee, a superintendent, a couple principals, and another appointee. I think that's a little imbalanced. But that's just I guess as we're kind of framing this out, it's just something to keep in mind.
Mhm. It's a good point. Well, do we need the principal of the school? I mean, to Sarah's
Yes.
point, if they're probably not.
That's a state
The
building
state
requirement.
building
Yeah.
thing.
Suggestion.
I think it's a suggestion. It's not a requirement. Yeah.
Yeah, but when
think-
you,
I
when
think
you're-
as a non-voting member, I would like to hear their feedback. I agree that I don't think they need to be voting and where they're non-resident, even if they were a resident. Obviously, I can't imagine they're going to vote. I don't know. I think they should be at least advisory in some capacity.
well,
if we
you figure
assume-
they're the ones who run the building you're building and know the kids and teachers best and what they need best and what the issues are. Yeah, I think the principal should be there, but I agree, non-voting, same as the superintendent.
So to Tom's point, I mean, if we have the superintendent and the principal of the school, potentially 2 principals, that's 3 from the school. Does anyone have a proposal for how many other school related people there would be? Is it two? Is it?
What if we had one school committee member and two persons recommended by the school committee, but that have experience in education, but are not school committee members or employees? So the school committee would do like a request for applications and would, submit these two people. So you'd have three total voting, but only one would be a school committee member. None of them would be employees.
I think,
I don't have strong feelings about this. I would defer to the group.
I think
Are
that
we
could
gonna
work.
want, are we gonna want to impose particular qualifications for who they can appoint?
I think we should specify that they have to have experience in education. I don't know how specific we need to get about that, but we do want somebody who's got, maybe at least one of the two non-school committee has experience at professional experience in education. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
with the-
one can be a prior or current parent.
We could just say, pertinent educational experience. So you could easily have a principal in a different district who lives in Medfield,
Mhm.
right? There would be a good understanding. They might even been through a building project. So that's a lot to bring to the table to help when talking about this. So if we said appointing two people with, pertinent educational experience, right? Because who knows what we're building, right? Or what we're rehabbing, or what the case may be. And I think they could do that with the one school committee member. In a way, I sort of think it's better with two school committee members there. I just think there's better chance of everything getting relayed back, but meetings are taped and recorded, so it's not like the other members couldn't watch. Oh, no, school building committees recorded their meetings?
It's a public meeting, so
It's a
like
public meeting.
if it's on Zoom easily, if it's not on Zoom, like planning board aren't recorded. They're
Could we-
audio.
Could we put it into the bylaw that they should be recorded?
I mean, the only problem is if they move off of Zoom, do we have the,
Technical
room?
capabilities, right?
Well, we record school committee meetings. They're all recorded long before Zoom.
Yeah.
Were they recorded by Medfield TV?
Yeah.
What I was thinking maybe we should do is move on to one of the next categories and revisit whether it's 1 to 2 school committee members. Do we have consensus that we would have 2 non-employee, non-school committee people appointed by the school committee, at least one of whom has pertinent educational experience?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. I would
So I
even
think
say
the only
both.
open issue for the
both
school
should be.
committee section is whether it's 1 or 2 school committee members.
Yeah, and I'd say they both should have some educational experience.
Well, I'm wondering why we need that quality added in here. If we have a school committee member, a principal, a superintendent, what more school experience are we gonna need
I
in
think,
building a building?
I think the piece is that they'll be more free to be able to talk and say what might be needed and what might be, I'm going to use the word frivolous. And that might not be exactly the right word to use, but I think it's important. Having been in the field a long time, I've seen a lot of buildings. Most teachers don't get to be in a new building, and most of the time they just want a very practical building that has enough room in it and some storage space, et cetera. And someone who's not on the school committee or working with the superintendent and principals might have a more independent voice about what you need and be more able to question and challenge educational thoughts.
So this would be an individual who's not working in the school system.
Exactly.
And
it could be
they might not be a teacher either. They could be someone who has experience in, educational consulting or
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah.
I also agree with you, Carolyn. I think that a voting member with knowledge of educational approaches and things like that is important.
Okay. Do we want to move on to some of the other appointing bodies?
Yep.
So can I, with the Board of Selectmen, I have a suggestion. And this is why I had asked Brittany to include the existing bylaw that we're either amending or adding to, because I don't know for some of these things that we need to reinvent the wheel. The existing bylaw just for buildings, not schools, states that the Board of Selectmen should endeavor to appoint a member with expertise in architecture, building engineering, commercial and municipal construction, and so forth. I would be in favor of just adopting that. Just keep that for the selectmen. For this, why do they need a different criteria for a school building, particularly when we're going to have all the voices we just talked about giving the schools perspective? I would think the selectmen's criteria should be the same for a school building as it would be any other building.
I agree with you.
And that would be their two experts that they're appointing.
Yes.
And as we discussed the last time, we should make sure that they have energy experience.
Yeah, so we'd say two people with the experience that Bob described from the existing permanent building committee language. At least one of those two also needs energy experience.
Mm-hmm.
Most engineers in construction now have that lead, some level of,
It's more than lead.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
lead-
sorry, I should have added the other categories.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree, Cynthia.
So the idea is they'll appoint two people. Between the two people, cover all of these things that we want included. So one individual could have one or two expertises. You would need them to have multiples to cover all these bases.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that criteria is the same as it always has been, and we're just adding in the energy piece.
That makes sense.
Anybody want to add anything to that piece for now?
So that's one planning board member and two people with expertise. So they're appointing three at the moment.
Right.
Right. Correct.
And that planning board member would be chosen by the planning board.
Correct. So as to the fourth person, and I'm actually trying to find the language on my computer as we speak, so I apologize. But would the fourth person by the Board of Selectmen be someone with procurement understanding? Or is that in the language? Is that the AEC person? Do they also have procurement?
Yeah, that's not part of, if you're asking if that part of the existing bylaw, that's not already in.
Yeah,
that's
so I
not-
think, what do you think about the fourth person for the select board to be someone with experience in public building projects and procurement? I think that might be a suggestion of the state building committee. And I actually think it would practically be helpful.
My only concern will be if they can't find someone, right? I mean, I don't know.
Well,
especially
we
if
can
it's a
say,
voting-
we can recommend things just like the state does as well. We could say that the select board should endeavor to.
Yeah, and that's what it said. That's what the wording is now. They shall
Yeah.
endeavor to appoint people with the following expertise. And then, yeah, I don't know that we want to mandate it just because if they can't find someone with that qualification.
So we use the endeavor and include this experience in public construction and procurement. And hopefully they'll find it.
Okay.
And if they can't find so the planning board of the select boards for the planning board is set, that the planning board will recommend someone, will definitely have a person. Their other three, they'll endeavor to have people with these experiences. And if they can't find them, they pick whoever they want.
Do the best they can do. Get as
Yeah, the
close as
best
you
they
can
can
get.
do, right?
Yeah.
And do we want them to endeavor to have two of their three have design construction and the third procurement? Or can one person do everything and the other two are totally their choice?
Well, I don't, it's hard to know how many they'll get. So if we just say three and that we suggest expertise in these fields, and then however it works out,
Yeah,
I think that's right. I think it's hard to be too specific. And frankly, at the end of the day, the Board of Selectmen are elected officials, right? So if they deviate from the bylaw and appoint people that really don't have the qualifications, there's a remedy for that in the system. So
That's fair. The simpler, the better when we go to draft this. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
so one
you
planning
wanna-
board member and three people with suggested experience in the following. We're going to borrow the language from the permanent building committee and add the procurement
Yeah,
Energy.
and energy.
The detail that was included in all of the consultants' reports for the last project, I mean, just incredible detail. And the more you go over it, if a selectman or a moderator or whomever is at a loss for, which topics are recurring topics, it's there. We've spent as a town boatloads of money on consultants. And it can stretch us as far as the environmental scene, which is also concerning. So a refresher for anybody. That's a good. It's dull reading, but it's very applicable to any project because that what they put together is 2.5, 3 years old at the oldest.
Okay.
so should we look at the moderator?
Yes.
So from the notes from last time, for the moderator, we had 5 contemplated. We had a warrant committee member, a senior citizen, 2 people with building expertise, and a resident at large. Now that we're saying the select board has to have these people with building expertise, do you want to drop the moderators down to 4? Senior citizen, a town warrant committee member, 1 with building or architecture engineer, and 1 resident at large.
Well, I'm wondering now that we have 3 from the Board of Selectmen in the expertise field, maybe we just need 3 for the moderator, or just the warrant committee, the senior citizen, and the resident at large,
maybe you could have 2 residents.
or 2 residents at large. That would make it 4. That would make it pretty equal.
I do think that what we're looking for the moderator to give the expertise on is the warrant committee person.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we talked about trying to have the moderator be the person who brings in a different kind of resident type view. So I don't know if we need them to be pointing the expertise in terms of building.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, because the
Agreed.
selectmen are doing that now. So we got the warrant committee. That's super important, right?
yeah.
Definitely want to get a senior citizen and a resident at large, and might be someone who's just interested in building somewhere, or which would be good, right? Just a clean, objective perspective.
Yeah. So would the moderator be 3? 3
Yeah.
appointees?
I have 3 at the moment.
Why don't we?
Thought we were
Why
gonna do
don't?
residents.
Sorry, Cynthia.
I thought we were gonna do 2 residents.
Of
Yeah, I was
2
gonna say, why don't we say 2 residents for now, and then we'll come back and look at our numbers at the end, and then we can decide whether we want to
Good.
drop any. One thing I wanted to suggest relative to the senior citizen is, should we suggest, not a requirement, but suggest that the Council on Aging be consulted for the senior citizen appointment? I was just thinking about whether, I don't know, are we comfortable with the moderator just picking any senior citizen?
Well, I think the moderator can put out something and people can apply, and I could see the moderator easily consulting with the Council on Aging, but there's a lot of seniors who are probably not connected to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
Right.
so I don't want to limit it, but
I
I
don't
just
feel
think the
strongly.
moderator would do that. I just think they would, just reach out. I just,
Right.
What's
I
a
agree.
senior citizen? How old?
Depends on the audience.
Right. Is there just as by way of example to point to, is there a certain age at which you're allowed to apply to be a member of the senior center in town? Like, is there a minimum age for services?
I have no idea.
That might
Maybe
be
that-
something we could easily find out and might be a good benchmark, whatever it requires to allow you to take advantage of their services. Pick the lowest stage they offer.
Right.
So I think that's a really good point though, Russ. We're going to want to be, so I'm going to put in the notes that need to define lower age limit in maybe review with,
Well, like for
the-
housing, it's over 55 kind of thing. That
Right.
might be
Mhm.
the
well, we could
lower.
also just pick 55.
Yeah.
Do we
Yes.
feel comfortable?
Are people all right with 55? What if we just pick it to sort of,
It's going to be arbitrary no matter what you do, right?
Yeah.
So,
right?
I
but
just
it's
looked,
tentatively,
I just looked it up at 60.
I was gonna say 55 to me sounds kind of young to be a
Whose
senior
definition is
citizen.
60?
The
I like
Council on
60.
Aging.
Council on Aging, yeah. Well, an argument is,
AARP is 55.
Yeah, it's.
and the argument that
AARP
you
is
could have,
50.
and the argument of housing at 55 is a legitimate one to hang our hat on too. Because
I don't
like
think we need to spend too much
Carolyn
time.
said, we're not necessarily looking for somebody who's a member of COA. It's anybody in town who may be interested.
Maybe. So 55 just makes it
55.
a little bigger, right? Window for people.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's a long commitment. I don't, some people don't necessarily want to be in a committee for 3 years or whatever. So,
so do we want to say 55 for now, just to move it forward? Nothing is final, but at least it's a placeholder.
Yeah.
I think
I
so.
want to call it a senior citizen then.
Yeah,
Right.
maybe we just take that out. One resident over 55. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I put that down, one town resident over 55. So just to recap where we are right now, and we can come back and think about our numbers, but we have right now, in addition to the 3 to 4 non-voting members, the superintendent, the principal or polls of the multiple schools, and the town administrator, putting those people aside, we have 4 school committee, 4 select board, 4 moderator.
actually, we ended up with 3 school committee because we said 1 on the school committee and 2 with educational expertise.
Well, actually, I put a hold to return to it.
Okay,
I put the upper, but that's where
Yeah.
I think if we want to drop from 12, we either have a hold to go back to 2 or 1 school committee members open, and then
Yeah.
1 or 2 residents by the moderator is also open. How do people feel about each group having kind of equal number of appointees?
I don't think they have to.
I don't know, I guess there's a part of me that says it just looks very fair when it's equal. I was also thinking, school committee members are elected and they have certain terms, and a school building project could go on beyond your term.
good point.
So if we put 2 on, we have a better chance of making sure that there's somebody who's kind of there from start to finish.
Then would we?
That's an excellent point. Yeah.
Should we put in there then different terms?
No, I just think if we just put 2 school committee members, it's just better mathematically in terms of length of, elected terms. And you might say you're going to run again, but you might lose. There's all kinds of ways that could change. Then you have someone starting from ground zero in the middle of a project. And that's difficult.
You also have the same problem with the planning board member.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Although the
was-
planning board terms are longer, I think, than the school committee. Are the school committee 3 years?
3 years.
Planning
know when
board's
we-
5.
When we did the high school and the middle school, we had 2 school committee members on, Tim Bonfatti and Susan Cotter, and it was very helpful. Having them both there. There was a lot of work to do and a lot of reporting back, and it was
I
nice.
like the idea of having 2 people too. I'm a little nervous with just that level of with just one. I like the broader base of two people on the school committee reporting back, giving their opinions.
What if
Now,
we,
now, just for clarification, you keep using the term school committee. It's really the school board, right?
It's a-
No.
In our town, it's a school committee.
So the people who are elected, the 5 of them who are elected, among them 5, I think they're 5,
Yeah,
among
there's
those
5.
5, they have to decide between them which of their 2 get to participate.
Yeah, I thought it was
Yeah.
the school board.
Well, we've always called it school committee. A lot of places do call it the school board, but Medfield is used school committee.
Maybe just make a note of that, just a point of
Yeah, we
clarification.
should,
Well,
once
on
we're
the-
ready to
When
draft,
you
we should
vote
check.
on Monday, when you go vote on Monday, you'll see it says vote not more than 2 school committee.
Okay. All right.
can I just ask one clarifying question on this? Because I'm concerned that if we get 2 school committee members who are appointed, who are in their 3rd year of their term, we have a problem, which is why I'm thinking we need to have them on different places in their term.
Specify that they can't have terms that end at the same time.
Yes, great point.
Yeah, we could say that or just hope they were smart enough to think about that, but
Well,
No, I think we
don't
should
wanna
say it.
put pants. You know, they could say, oh, you know, we'll appoint these 2 and they're sure going to get reelected, and then they don't.
yeah, then they don't, yeah. So, yeah, let's do that just because we know that, projects carry on.
That would be the school committee's decision, because again, I keep thinking that it's not about the person or their term. It's about their position. So the school committee would have, and I know you'd have some brain drain if you put somebody on a committee and then they didn't win or they decided not to run again. Committees can be fluid. Just something to keep in mind.
Well, my only concern would be if we had 2 appointed who were both in their last year of their term.
Mhm.
Then they just get started and, we know it's going to go more than a year.
Mhm. Yep,
Well,
fair point.
hopefully if they, whoever replaces them on the committee is up to snuff and up to speed on what's going on with this rather important.
Right.
But we're spending a lot of time on the school committee stuff, Bob. Come on. Move us to a
Look,
different
mister.
part of the field.
You
So-
want the gavel, Mr. Murray?
No chance.
So I think we've pretty much gone over what we think should be here so far, but I have a kind of an outside of the box couple thoughts here. The last building committee had a number of people who were on the permanent building committee as such. And I'm wondering if right now we don't have anybody from there. And I'm wondering if somebody or at least one brings to the table experience of building some kind of buildings in Medfield over the past history. And I'm wondering if you want to add that to the mix here. And the second idea was in the notes that came in on the 15th, there was a comment from Chris McHugh Potts, and she enumerated a number of other qualities that might be helpful, like people who are familiar with the master plan and housing, economic development, historical, cultural, natural resources, open spaces, recreational spaces, public facilities, a whole bunch of stuff. And as I was reading that and thinking about it, I don't know how I would, determine the qualifications for people to come to that. But I'm just wondering if we want to consider something in that kind of a group, open spaces, conservation.
Yep.
I'm worried that, and 2 thoughts. One in terms of picking members from the permanent building committee, I don't even know if we have one right now, right? Scott was unclear about that, but there's no reason any of the boards can't appoint someone from that committee, right? I don't know that we need to say it has to be, but I would think the selectman and the moderator could certainly pick someone who also is on that board. So I don't know that we need to call it out specifically.
Well, you've already identified what the selectmen are going to choose, and they have to choose people with architect, construction,
Right.
building, and that, but nobody with conservation fits in any of that. As an example.
But that's, so let me just go back to the first one though. So the first point I think was members of the permanent building committee. And I guess what I'm saying is I don't know, the other one is a different issue, but for that, I'm not sure we need to
All right.
specify that.
Well,
Because they could
the
pick
issue
them.
being there that they have experience building in Medfield.
Right.
That's
But
says
don't
a
they-
lot.
But what I'm saying is they could pick from them. There's no reason why they
Yeah.
could not pick someone who's on that
Right.
committee
Right,
inherently. So,
right.
It's like a draft board. If you look at our town's annual report, our town's annual report is going to show you every committee we have in town and who the members are. So these appointing groups, I would think that they would use that as some reference to whom they want to appoint or propose to appoint. And then beyond that, they're going to build up their database, with a deadline to get this thing done. So, yeah, I mean, we have a lot of qualified people in town, a lot of qualified people who are already serving in different capacities and in valuable capacities. So, I mean, is it up to us with I don't know, what was Marcucci's draft? 300 words? I mean, I don't know how finite we have to get with the criteria for what makes a suitable appointee.
Well, we've also left openings here. So when the Board of Selectmen choose some expertise, they can do the permanent building because most of those people have expertise. And when the moderator does residents at large, they can then look at the Conservation Committee. They can
Right.
look at any of those boards and say, I think this would be good because the place we're going to put this school is near conservation land. So let's get someone, you know what I mean? They have two at large, plus the person over 55 could have had town experience on board. So there's 3
I-
openings there to
I
pick
think
from.
also not conservation specifically, but the open space master plan. I think we talked last time about how the planning board would likely serve that role. So the planning board is charged with implementing the master plan, at least as it relates to zoning strategies. So whoever participates on behalf of the planning board will be informed on the master plan and open space, transportation, general environmental issues at a high level. So I think that kind of master planning might be covered. And I agree. I think the conservation agent or someone with experience in conservation could be chosen by any number of people. I'm less, I think the permanent building committee is an interesting point because they do have that experience, but if they're not like convened at that time, it's hard to refer back to them to choose someone, say someone from that has to serve on this. So I don't know. I'm
I
guess
agree
more
with
in
Tom.
favor of just leaving it open.
I
So-
agree too. I think if you get too many criteria, it's unworkable. At some point, you have to trust the appointing bodies to cover these different interests.
So why don't we make it clear? Because Sarah, you and I know that the planning board is implementing the master plan, but the general public does not know that. And so maybe we can put some language in that the planning board member will represent the areas of the master plan, including conservation, historical, those sorts of things. So that, if somebody were to have a particular conservation issue, they would know they could go to the planning board and that's the person who's representing that issue.
I
I think
just,
that's fine.
I'm glad you clarified that. I think that's really helpful. But are you saying, Cynthia, that it should go in the bylaw?
I think we should say something in the bylaw and we could abbreviate it by saying, that member who is appointed by the planning board will also represent the issues of the master plan.
Yeah, so I put planning board
Mhm.
member chosen by the planning board representing the interests of the townwide master plan.
Great.
Oh, that's good.
Great.
I think that's good. That sentence will help a lot. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
we're down to
Okay.
15 minutes. What else do we want to
Okay.
cover this evening?
Before we move on, I think we're pretty well settled on the 12. Do we have any agita about it being an even number of voting? I still have a little bit of discomfort.
I do, but I think Cynthia said it earlier, maybe you go to 2/3.
Yeah. And I think with a project this size.
We want them to get to
it's gonna
2/3
be
anyway.
big.
Yeah.
We want more than a simple majority on this.
We
Okay,
want
so
consensus. Yeah.
let's
So
go
this is-
2/3.
I think this is a good segue into like how many do we need for a quorum? How many do they need to act? Some of the procedural requirements. So if we have the quorum would be of the voting members. So if the
Yes.
superintendent or the principal don't show up, it's not going to affect your quorum. So to have a meeting, a quorum of 12 is 5, 6.
Well, it's usually more than half, right?
There'll be
Right.
7. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think
it
it's
should be 7.
Okay,
Yeah.
so quorum is 7, and
To
then a
hold a meeting,
2/3.
7 to hold a meeting, 2/3 for a vote.
Yes.
Well, usually the 2/3 is of the people sitting and the quorum. So
Oh, that's a good
that
point.
doesn't get you 2/3 of the whole committee.
Yeah, so 7 members to hold the meeting.
Yeah,
If a vote needs to be taken, it needs to be 2/3 of the 12-member committee.
So if you didn't have everyone there, you basically have to get everyone who came that night to
For the
get.
vote, you
your
have to say to them, yeah, if you want to vote, we all have to be here tonight.
that's right.
That's a really good point, Russ, because 2/3 of 7 is not enough for this kind of a project.
And depending on who shows up that night.
Yes, exactly.
That's
Yeah,
not,
no,
Do we have the ability to determine who we think, do we have an ability to say who the chairman should be of the committee? Which position?
We do. I don't know whether that's a good idea, but I did read bylaws where they said that the chairperson had to be the school committee member, for example.
And I hadn't
I-
thought about this earlier as far as who I think might be the best one, but that occurred to me.
Well, what
Well-
about if it was let the 3 appointing bodies vote? I mean, it's an odd number. The 3 of them each they have to decide on who the chair is. 2 out of 3 win. I don't know. You want to
because
skew it
they're
to
not
one
gonna,
department.
that's a big administrative burden, isn't it? Because they're not gonna know who each other chose. They're gonna have to hear that, learn about the people.
Well,
I'd be hesitant to have the school committee pick, just because, I mean, the chairperson in a project like that, I mean, you control the agenda, right? That's a pretty significant power.
yeah, on the other hand, the school committee should be, right, talking to the select people, presenting about what's going on, keeping everybody informed. So, I mean, that,
Do you see the chairperson as being a person of power or just simply an administrative of the meetings?
Well, I think it depends on the person, right? I mean, I think here for this purpose, hopefully I'm just keeping the trains running on time and you guys are talking. But I mean, I've been on enough committees to know that you control the agenda, you control where things are going, and a strong chairperson is going to do that.
yeah, the chair
Um,
does, yeah.
I think that I was starting to lean toward maybe the warrant committee person does it. It's kind of a wild idea, but like you also don't want the chair to be someone who's never run a public meeting. And you
mm,
know that everyone who participates in, say, the warrant committee is on a board that regularly has to get through business efficiently. So I kind of
Mhm.
like that person from a procedural, but they may be like one of the not least invested, but they're obviously not as invested as the school committee person. So I don't know, part of me feels like maybe you just leave it to the committee to decide.
By same vote, by 2/3 of the majority. Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes sense. That actually has a lot of logic to it, because then each of the bodies is going to agree on who's.
yeah. Who's sitting
Right.
there at the table for that particular thing? I mean, maybe you'll have somebody sitting at the table who's not on the school committee, who's very good at chairing meetings, who has some experience in previous buildings or something, that has the time. I don't know, but maybe we let them decide, because they'll see the makeup.
It works for me.
So
They
no-
should also appoint, like within themselves, they should appoint like a secretary for taking minutes, that whatever you want to call it. What other roles? Just a chair and
Yeah, definitely need chair and someone taking the minutes. It's all public, so.
are
Can I
there
just
any?
ask in the last committee who took minutes?
Well, that was a problem, wasn't it? They can't find a lot of minutes for one of the years. or
Oh,
two of them, yeah.
okay.
A secretary.
Well, we should make sure we say that minutes must be taken.
Well, it's
And recorded.
law about a public committee, so it's not a choice there. We don't really need to say it, but somebody should be checking that it is for sure.
Well, if they're going to be recorded as well, so we have
Right.
another way.
That is a very big job. Being the
It
second
is a big job.
It is a big job, and I know sometimes in some committees, the town will appoint someone.
Yeah, yeah, you know, at times they've had not any one of the 12 members, but they've actually hired paid extra to someone who's already some type of administrative assistant in the town, go and be the minute taker for it.
And I think that makes sense because then, you have the member who's trying to take minutes can't really participate fully.
Yeah,
We have a clerk take the planning board minutes.
So
and
why don't
note-
we write that in the bylaw that the town will appoint a clerk, administrative assistant, whatever I'm not sure what the technical word is, to take minutes at all school building committee meetings.
Perfect. Okay. Other things quickly, if we have time just to think about, and we're running out of time, we'll meet again. One of the questions before had been term limits, but I don't know that we need term limits, right? Because this would be project specific. I would think you'd want people to sign on for the term of the project, so.
Yeah, I wouldn't do term limits. If they could stay for the project and understand that, it would be really helpful. I mean, they may not make it, you might have to replace them, but at least start with the idea you're on from beginning to end.
Especially where it's going to be project specific. Yeah, so does everyone agree on that? I mean, is there any debate on that?
I agree.
Well,
I do think we need to say, I don't disagree. I do think we need to say that each party will serve for the length of the, project in question.
we did see some problems with the state hospital in that committee. There was some turnover and conflicts and so forth. So I don't think that we should have term limits, but
We probably also need to say that in the event of an absence, then the original appointing party reappoints the person who's gone. So if a school committee member is no longer a school committee member, then the school committee has to replace.
Right.
If the resident moves out of town, the moderator has to replace.
Yes,
Yep.
let's put that in. It's their job if the person doesn't, that makes sense.
do we want a minimum required attending meetings? And if you don't attend, if you have like 3 unexcused misses, you can be voted off.
I don't think we need to put that into a bylaw.
Okay.
It's a massive commitment. So yeah, I don't know.
It's also, I would be very hard to pick the number if this is a 9-year project. 3's like nothing. If it's a 1-year project, then 3's
Yeah.
significant. So
Yeah.
Right.
You're out
okay.
sick,
So I think
um,
one other thing that we had talked about is who starts the process. I think, so who starts the process? This is another place where I'm wondering if we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I mean, if this is going to be project specific, the existing bylaw, and obviously we're going to have to graft what we do onto that somehow. But it says any user department seeking to construct blah, 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 a building shall file an application with the Board of Selectmen. If the Board of Selectmen determines the project should proceed, it will, we'd have to figure out that next piece. It will do what? But I mean, I wonder if we just keep that process.
Where are you reading that from?
Yeah, so I'm in paragraph L of the existing permanent building committee bylaw.
I think the example that Chris McHugh sent from Wellesley had the school committee starting the process. And I'm not sure I like that because ultimately any town building project has to be kind of participated in by not just the school committee, but also the select board, because it's going to be a financial undertaking by the town. So I don't want the school committee to kind of run off and convene this without the involvement of the legislative body of the town.
And that's what would happen. I think so. You're right that, I mean, that paragraph O would, you take out any user department and it would say, if the school department seeks to do a building, then we have this existing wording that they apply to the Board of Selectmen. And there's already a process there that the Board of Selectmen know that they've followed. And if they approve it, they think it should go forward, then they would hold a vote or something like that, and the 3 bodies would then appoint the members.
Well, practically, I mean, if the Board of Selectmen didn't support what you were doing, the project wasn't gonna go that far anyhow, because they appoint people. So it's kind of a, right, it's kind of a weird thing, isn't it? But the school committee should be talking for a long time about the idea that they might need a new building
Right.
or major renovation, or whatever. So this would be something that would be at their meetings. And I would assume that somebody from that school committee was going to select persons' meetings every now and then saying, by the way, we started to talk that we might need a new building, heads up, everybody. And then eventually they bring the proposal forward. So,
Right.
I mean, in the end, you just everybody has to work as a team, and you don't want anyone to be surprised by it.
No,
But if the committee just votes that they're going to do it, then and the select people don't agree, it's gonna falter anyhow, so.
yeah, I think there's a benefit on this one to having just a clear procedure, and we have an existing procedure. I don't know why we need, I think we're adding on once you've gone down the road, how does it operate? But I don't know that we need to totally
Yeah.
restate how you decide whether or not to go down the road.
I think we should just say the school committee should first take a vote that this is what they think they need, right? It should be a majority of the school committee. And then they go to Board of Selectmen and say, we think we need a building. Now we're asking for your vote, and then the Board of Selectmen vote. And then if it's a yay in both places, it goes forward.
And I don't know that we need to say that on the school committee, because presumably their own internal policies and procedures would call for that, right? They can't go to the selectmen and file a project application without an appropriate vote of the school board. So I just wonder if that's already inherent in the way things work. Because that's what the existing law says, that the department, which here would be the school board, would file a project application with the Board of Selectmen. So the school committee can't do that unless they've held a vote and approved it.
I don't know what the application thing looks like. I'm sorry to say, so I'm not quite sure how intense or short that is. Did that happen this last time? Is that how it went? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
To the best of my knowledge, that's how it happened.
Okay.
I mean, if there's a process there that people know,
And they've used and it's successful, then yeah,
why reinvent the wheel? Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
So Bob, I think you're bringing up another question that I've certainly had, is this an amendment to the current bylaw? Or are you writing a separate bylaw? And I think that's a question we need to talk about. Maybe not tonight, but we need to figure that.
Huge. No, I agree. And that's actually a great segue. So to be the train conductor, we are at 8:15. So maybe we should talk about, just confirm what we've kind of agreed to tonight. And then what are we going to talk about next week?
You want me to recap what I think we've agreed to tonight based on the minutes?
Please.
Sure.
So I think what we have tentatively agreed on is that we would have the voting members appointed by three entities: the moderator, the school committee, and the select board. That the superintendent, the principals of the impacted schools as applicable, and the town administrator would serve as non-voting members or their designees in all cases. In terms of the number of people and their expertise to be appointed by the school committee, we had 4 total, 2 school committee members, and then 2 non-employee, non-school committee members, at least one of whom has pertinent educational experience. The select board would have 4 total, one of whom is the representative of the planning board, chosen by the planning board to represent the interests of the townwide master plan, and 3 with ideally experience in building, construction, architecture, engineer, and procurement, as well as energy, using the language from the existing permanent building committee bylaw. And then the moderator would appoint 4, one of which is a warrant committee member, one of whom is a resident over 55 years of age, and 2 other residents at large. That's composition. Process, we agreed that of that, then 12 voting, 3 to 4 non-voting member board. The quorum would be 7 people, of which are all members. vote would require 2/3 of the overall voting members, not just those then present at the meeting. And that, which would mean 2/3 of 12 would be 8, right?
That's right.
And then the chair would be elected by a 2/3 vote of the committee. Would that be 2/3 of the people present the night of the vote to establish the committee, or 2/3 of the total committee?
I think it's 2/3 of the total.
Yeah, same.
Great.
Okay. And then a clerk would be provided by the town to take minutes at all meetings. The term of each person's appointment would be the length of the school project under review. Vacancies would be filled by the original appointing authority. And in terms of how the process would begin, the select board would be the gatekeeper of the initial application from a relevant entity, which in this case would likely be the school committee, that they would like to have the committee created. If the select board voted in favor, then each of the appointing authorities would be notified to then convene the committee.
Excellent.
Did you include what the number of is for a quorum?
7, yes.
Thanks.
I think that covers what we,
Yeah, which is a lot, really.
it's
Yeah.
incredible.
So I think that what I think the next meeting tasks are, we have to start drafting, and we really need to tackle, before we can draft, Cynthia's question of whether this is an amendment to the existing or a new.
Yeah.
I was personally thinking this would be a new section, but we can borrow a lot of points, to Bob's point, from the existing, but it's probably cleanest to have a permanent building committee, and we would need to, I think, amend the permanent building committee to carve out school building projects that are subject to this other section. So it's probably a new and an amendment, but the amendment would be very simple to just clarify that these are school building projects would not be under the permanent building committee's jurisdiction, unless that's adequately clear.
Right, and we also have a number of other capital projects that the town is going to be seeing, certainly funding them and looking at it in a longer term, in conjunction with the long-term master plan. So, keeping it tight and distinct is pretty important.
Right.
Great.
I think it would be easier too, in terms of presenting, because we just need a phrase in there excluding
Yeah.
school building in the beginning. And then we have a clean new section for everybody to read. I think it's easier than trying to edit all the way down and have people go through it.
Yeah, I agree.
Personally.
Can we do this by April the 5th?
Yeah,
I
see,
think-
that's,
I think we're working towards
We're
it.
getting closer.
Yeah, I think we made huge progress tonight.
So just thinking about next meeting and this drafting exercise, if we're gonna start clean, do we want to kind of, a number of us, take like a portion and agree to draft it and send a draft by next week that we could review? Like, I could draft the process section, or somebody else could draft the appointing section and try to do it that way.
That's an idea. Another suggestion as to how to go at it. I think if the minutes from tonight are very detailed, and sort of bullet points like we did, I think frankly, that gives us the framework. And then I'm wondering, is it possible for our next meeting to have someone who knows how to use Zoom better than I do, have a side screen showing those points, and we can discuss and fill in live time the details.
Yeah, and actually I can do that. Well, I don't know if Brittany, you can let me share my screen. Let me see if I have my-
Everybody should be able to share
Oh,
this.
I
Yeah,
can.
you can.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I can share my screen, and if you all can see this,
Yep.
Yes.
yeah.
I could be, I gotta move some stuff out of the way, but I can be tracking changes while we go. And I
Okay.
I'm
could
just
be-
thinking in terms of efficiency, that gets everyone's input live time on each point.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you could be drafting and people could be shouting out, that you already wrote that, whatever.
Want to try that for next week?
Yeah, but I do think it would be helpful if we had a couple of, if we don't lose a whole week by waiting to draft together next week. So if people, I'm willing to take on a section or two, had some time and just throw together something to start with.
Let me ask you, what do you envision being different than a detailed section of bullets
So
from
I
tonight's
wrote
meeting?
in the notes, like someone needs to go cut and paste the language from the permanent bylaw committee and stick it
okay.
here. So stuff like that.
Okay.
I can try to spend some time doing that. I don't think it'll take long.
So what part, Sarah, are you interested in trying to draft?
I don't mind. I'm agnostic. I thought the process was more boring for most people, so I offered to take the
All right,
that
do you
part, but it
want
doesn't.
me to try to draft like the appointing paragraph, who appoints what?
Sure.
Can I ask, though, not to be redundant, let's really try and stick to the bullets from tonight, because that's what we've agreed on tentatively. So let's
Right.
not try and rewrite it. Let's really try and stick with that as much as we can.
Yeah,
I think some of it'll just need to be an actual sentence instead of a bullet point. It's as boring as that.
right.
Yep. Agreed.
So just for the big picture, so there's no way we're gonna get it to the warrant committee's 29th meeting, right? To have them look at it. That just seems to me that's just not gonna happen unless we schedule a
It's
different
not.
meeting in here.
It's not-
So we're just trying to get on the warrant for April 5th. Right?
I would suggest that our mission is to get this drafted in the way that we think is proper, in the most expeditious manner we can. And then let the warrant committee, let the town government figure out how they process it. I think we should focus on producing the thing and then let them deal with how they implement it.
Well, I was just thinking this, because we talked about having a session for input from people in the town, that it might make sense to just, but on April 5th, if it's not there, it's not being printed in the warrant, so it's not going to happen at the next town meeting, which may be as it goes. But if we wanted a chance of that, then we should be thinking about scheduling that particular session in order to have that input in any draft we make next Tuesday. Is that, you know what I mean? So
I don't know scheduling wise. I mean, I guess for my brain, what I'm thinking is the next step is we need to kind of tentatively come up with what we think it looks like right? And then we need
Right.
to fine tune that at next week's meeting. And then maybe there'd be a public meeting after that. And then maybe there'd be one more meeting to sort of confirm it. So I think at a minimum, we're looking at 3 more meetings.
Yeah, procedurally, I
Yeah,
think,
posted-
but I'm not positive. But if it follows a similar process to like a zoning amendment, we have to get something printed in the warrant by the deadline, but then we can solicit public comment after that.
Oh, sure.
So
Yep.
we don't need to have
Oh,
had.
okay.
Well, I mean, we have to generally, at least as it relates to zoning, you have to stay within like the broad framework of what you noticed as what the article was going to look like. But otherwise you can refine. So I think we don't have to have all of the public input received, processed, debated before we get a placeholder in the warrant, if I'm
Oh, okay. All right.
understanding that correctly. I'm not positive.
All right. Well, if that's okay, then I don't feel, it just, doesn't feel quite so jammed in terms of, having something that would come up at the next town meeting.
And I
But,
thought,
just April 5th, just so we know, is 2 weeks from
Right.
2 weeks from tonight. So
Yeah.
You have 3 meetings in 2 weeks, you'd be cramming a little bit in. Carolyn, your point's good in, or at least connected to this. The warrant committee slammed right now. And
Yeah,
they're
that's what I
moving
figured.
right to the deadline.
Right.
And this is the way it goes every year. And I think there are fewer warrants this year. I believe that to be the case, so, but in terms of the budget and the challenges there, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
didn't we want a public, an offering of one night for a public hearing before we finished everything?
Yes, we definitely talked about that in the first meeting. Yep.
And the question is whether we can fit that in before we have to put a placeholder in the warrant, or whether we put a placeholder in the warrant and say, we're open to feedback, but we had to get this in the warrant.
And if we did that and we got feedback and changes, that would be on the town meeting, would be amending it.
It's not as simple.
That's not clean. That's not good. No.
Do we want to, we need 2 days' notice, right?
Yeah, 48 hours.
Do we want to
So-
try to meet twice next week? One public session and one final working session to finalize our draft?
Well, I'm suggesting maybe have it this Friday because we're not going to need to do any work to prepare for it. It's just letting everybody speak and we're listening.
I was just
Or
gonna
Monday. Well, no, Monday is town meeting.
Well, it's
Monday
town
is town
election,
election.
Election.
which, I mean, election's all day, so I'm okay with that. I don't know if any of you guys are working the election or anything, but
Are you allowed to have a meeting on an election day? I'm not sure.
oh, well, I don't even know that.
Oh.
Didn't. But I do think that we'd want our minutes from tonight up. So there's that part about us approving it, because I think our minutes tonight are substantial. We've come to a lot of conclusions. We haven't voted, but we've come to a lot of conclusions that we could draft. So before we ask the public to give the feedback, I'd like to have these minutes, there for them to say.
Do you want to
I-
take 2 minutes for me to put them on the screen and vote the minutes now? So you could publish them to the webpage?
You're good if your minutes are all set.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
I
noticing
think
there's
you should
only
do it every
one-
week, Sarah.
There's only one attendee tonight listening in, so we don't have many public listening in tonight.
I mean, I'd
Yeah,
have to kind of clean them up as we go, but I used Cynthia's format from last week, which people were happy with. In
are you
terms of the
guys
level
all
of
right
detail.
to hang on a little bit?
Yeah, I can.
Sure.
sure.
All right, why don't we do that, and then we'll approve it, and then we can post them right up, and then we can talk about when to have the public session, because then at least people will be up to date on what we have.
And I gotta minimize all of you, so I can see the
Yeah,
the
just
screen.
slide the dot in the middle of the screen over the.
Yeah, can you just add me to the attendees?
Hold on. Yes, sorry, Cynthia.
Not a problem.
E on the end, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is that big enough?
Yes.
Yeah, if anyone needs it bigger, there's a little, what do you call that thing? The little gray bar, you just pull it to the right and the screen will get bigger and the people will get smaller.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, you just pushes everybody in a line and you just keep making the document bigger and everybody
Good.
gets smaller. So that there's a sentence under the first bullet of school committee. You just want to finish it. The committee also remembered the two
yeah.
members were not on the same term.
Thank you. I'm going to change this to say consensus that we should have 2 non-employee, non-school committee members appointed by, even though it's under here.
Mhm.
Anyone further comments on the school committee section?
I'm a little slow. Hold
Sure.
on.
Give you a second.
Okay, I'm good with the school committee.
Sarah, you see how you put after moderator to appoint for total? Why don't we just throw to appoint after select board and school committee, just the sort of formatting.
Yes, thank you.
Sarah, and then down below, will you say existing PBC bylaw?
Yep.
I would just put maybe paragraph C. That's where that wording is, paragraph C of. Yeah, that's fine.
Little c, big C.
Capital C.
Yeah,
I'm
that
gonna
would
move
be
that over.
good.
Using language from,
Section C.
Autocorrect.
When it does that.
Yeah, it's
I have to turn that off.
If you have an
Somehow.
Apple, you can hit Command Z and it will undo what it did for you automatically.
I don't have an Apple.
Yeah.
Anything on the select board further? I think before I forget, I had a board of selectmen up here.
Have they officially
They voted?
changed?
Is that their new name? Select
Have they
Board?
officially changed?
Thought they voted. I
You know
thought they
what?
did.
Can we deal with that maybe at another time? Just in the interest of time?
Haha.
Sorry.
All right, moderator 4, warrant committee member 1, town resident over 55 years of age, 2 other residents at large.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you want to just, do you just want to write 12 total? Just for reference, 12 voting members total.
That's good.
In
Oop, hold
process,
on, too far. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say in process number B, 2/3 of the committee, why don't you put 8/12? So we're all clear.
Yeah.
It's 8 out of the 12.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, you got a lot in there, Sarah. Good job.
Yeah, excellent.
Really good job.
I take minutes a lot at work.
And we're going to say that it's also going to be recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Russ.
Oh,
Good
good
point.
catch. Yep.
Do you want to clarify video rather than audio, or are you agnostic? Would audio be acceptable?
Um,
I think audio's fine. I mean, for tonight.
I'm going to say the clerk will take the minutes in all meetings and assure that the meeting is recorded.
yeah.
I'm going to say vacancy in any position to be filled, just to clarify that you can only fill the one you filled before.
Right.
Do you want to say term of each in E, term of each position is the length of the project?
Appointment?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I say school building project under,
Yeah. Okay.
So it seems like we've decided G. So should we change it now from discussion?
yep.
We've now decided.
Maybe what we could say is starting the process as provided in the first sentence of section L of the existing bylaw.
Of the permanent building committee bylaw.
I'm sorry, yes, yep.
Say L.
L, yep, and it not to be the first sentence thereof. And then I think what you put at the end, substituting school committee or department, whatever you want, the opening words of L are any user department. So here it would say that whatever the right wording is for the school committee. Perfect.
So we're going to already agree to the minutes. So I'm going to take that off next meeting tasks.
Yep.
Prepare a draft of a new clean section to review as a group. Sarah to draft the process section following the minutes of 322 meeting. Carolyn to draft the appointment section following the minutes of the 322 meeting.
So we also talked about adding a new amendment to the existing
Yep.
bylaw.
Yes,
Mhm.
to make it clear that school buildings are excluded.
Yep.
And then do you want to have a next meeting task to discuss public meeting timing or?
So let me ask you, what do people think? I mean, I think the meeting minutes tonight give a pretty clear roadmap where we're going. Do we want to
Yes,
hold
they-
the public hearing and then finalize it? Or to me, that might be more efficient.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
just-
or another possibility is that I mean, we only had one person attend tonight. As much as we are really hoping for robust public process coming from the planning board, we never have anyone attend. Do we want to plan on our next meeting rather than having two meetings, given our compressed time frame? Have our next meeting be a little bit longer and dedicate more of the beginning to public comment?
I was just thinking that too. What if we started, say, 6:30 and just put in extra time? And then we'll spend the rest of the time looking at our drafts and writing and see where we get.
That's a good idea. And tonight, perhaps contributing to the lack of outside participation, there's a select board meeting.
Right.
And it conflicts with this, and it's also Mike Marcucci's, last meeting. So maybe our fellows that are paying closer attention to what's going on there.
So
So how much time?
are you suggesting then next Tuesday would not be appropriate for public comment?
Well, they don't start till 7, right? So if we
Oh.
start at 6:30, we could get a half an hour's worth of public comment before
Oh,
people feel compelled to
As
leave.
of right now, there is not a select board meeting
Oh,
next
even
Tuesday.
better.
But that's saying as of right now. So I don't know what might come up, but the next one is scheduled for the 5th.
Oh, okay.
Let's
So
do
that
that.
would
Start
be
at
good.
6:30.
Yeah,
How
I'll
much
start
time?
at 6:30. What do you say?
An
45
hour?
minutes?
I think we could say an hour, and we're probably not going to have enough people to fill an hour if I had to guess.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think so either, but
Are we gonna
You want
limit?
to put time limits on each speaker so you don't have one person just doing, filibuster?
I think what we did before was good. What did we give, 3 minutes?
No, we gave
Well-
90 seconds. And I
Oh,
thought
right.
yeah,
short.
yeah, let's make it a little longer. So let's say 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
3 minutes is interminable, but 90 seconds is pretty short.
2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 minutes. Everyone's welcome. Please look at the minutes before you come and then you'll know where we are. So.
So
Is Joanna still on our group with us?
Scott communicated to me that she had hoped to make it tonight, but was most likely a no for the next 2 weeks. So I'm guessing she is not.
Okay.
I think given the time constraints, she would agree that we kind of need to continue to plug on without her.
Scott may have
So
implied he did a
I
vote.
don't think Brittany has to notice the end of meetings, just the start. But let's, for our own purposes, plan on it being a 6:30 to 8:30 meeting next week with the hope of coming out with a draft.
Yes.
And I'll plan to share my screen again with, these minutes, whatever Carolyn and I have a chance to put together. We can't communicate offline, but we can send them to Brittany, who can include them, can transmit them to the rest of the group.
Right.
Okay. So do we want to have a motion to approve the minutes from tonight's meeting?
I'll
Yes.
make that motion to approve the minutes as we just read together and edited.
Second.
Okay, so we need to do a vote. So I vote to approve the minutes. Sarah,
Yes.
Cynthia,
Yes.
Russ,
yes.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
so moved. The minutes are approved. Okay.
Okay. And then an adjourn. I'm gonna stop.
Then we adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, let's have a vote. Sarah,
Yes.
I vote yes. Cynthia,
Yes.
Russ?
I don't know, I'm having a good time.
You can have 2 hours next Tuesday.
Yes.
Carolyn
Yes.
and Tom.
Yes.
And Brittany, thank you so much for staying late with us.
Yes.
Thanks, Brittany.
No problem.
See
Take
everyone
care,
next week.
everybody.
See everybody.
Bye.
Bye.